Hi guys. Okay, so this will be our last Wonder reading. We should be done with it after this. So I'm just going to dive right in and this will be it. So let's see. Okay, this chapter is called The Emperor's Guard. We backtracked through the grass for a good 10 minutes to see if we could find my hearing aids, but it was way too dark to see anything. We literally had to hold on to each other's shirts and walk in single file so we wouldn't trip over one another. It was like black ink had been poured all around. "This is hopeless," said Henry. "They could be anywhere." "Maybe we can come back with a flashlight," answered Amos. "No, it's okay," I said. "Let's just go back. Thanks, though." We walked back toward the cornfields and then cut through them until the back of the giant screen came into view. Since it was facing away from us, we didn't get any light from the screen at all until we had walked around to the edge of the woods again. That's where we finally started seeing a little light. There was no sign of the seventh graders anywhere. "Where do you think they went?" said Jack. "Back to the food trucks," said Amos. They're probably thinking we're going to report them." "Are we?" asked Henry. They looked at me. I shook my head. "Okay," said Amos, "but little dude, don't walk around here alone again, okay? If you need to go somewhere, tell us and we'll go with you." "Okay," I nodded. As we got closer to the screen, I could hear high on a hill was a lonely goat herd and could smell the cotton candy from one of the concession stands near the food trucks. There were lots of kids milling around in this area, so I pulled what was left of my hoodie over my head and kept my face down, hands in pockets, as we made our way through the crowd. It had been a long time since I had been out without my hearing aids, and it felt like I was miles under the earth. It felt like that song Miranda used to sing to me, "Ground control to Major Tom. Your circuit's dead, there's something wrong." I did notice as I walked that Amos had stayed right next to me and Jack was close on the other side of me, and Miles was in front of us and Henry was in back of us. They were surrounding me as we walked through the crowd of kids like I had my own Emperor's Guard. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all the rest of Aslan's army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night. Only now in the daylight they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I had been reading for over an hour and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight on under the sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we'd been gone. Mr. Tushman and Ms. Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something bad had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that can be, how you could have a night that's the worst in your life, but to everyone else, it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life, this and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, this was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was even a good day. Maybe somebody won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we had been sitting before with Summer and Maya and Reed. And then they went and sat where they had been sitting before with Ximena and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we had left it before we went looking for the toilets. The sky was the same. The movie was the same. Everyone's faces were the same. Mine was the same. But something was different. Something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while they were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spreads fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabins. All the girls, even girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge on the group of seventh grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what had happened, but they found out anyway. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt or the bloody elbow, or maybe it's just that teachers hear everything. When we got back to the camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged up by the camp nurse, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get a description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their faces I keep seeing every time I close my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me, the way the kid with the flashlight, Eddie, looked at me as he talked to me like he hated me. Like a lamb to the slaughter. I remember Dad saying that ages ago, but tonight I think I finally got what he meant. Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in front of the school along with all the other parents when the bus arrived. Mr. Tushman told me on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them there had been a situation the night before, but that everyone was fine. He said the camp director and several of the counselors went looking for the hearing aid in the morning while we all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Broarwood would reimburse us the cost of the hearing aids, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wondered if Eddie had taken my hearing aids with him as a kind of souvenir, something to remember the orc. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she might. Her hug felt good, and I didn't shake it off like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find and I went to find mine while Mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Ms. Rubin, who had walked over to her. As I rolled my bag toward her, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello or patting my back as I walked by them. Ready? Mom said when she saw me. She took my duffel bag and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she had wanted to carry me on her shoulders, I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tushman gave me a quick, tight hug, but didn't say anything. Home. Mom and I didn't talk much the whole walk home, and when we got to the front stoop, I automatically looked in the front bay window because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when we walked inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on my head and on my face like she was breathing me in. It's okay, Mom, I'm fine, I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. I know you are, she said. I missed you so much, Augie. I missed you too. I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. Are you hungry? She asked. Starving. Can I have a grilled cheese? Of course, she answered, and immediately started to make the sandwich while I took my jacket off and sat down at the kitchen counter. Where's Via? I asked. She's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie, Mom said. Yeah? She would have liked the nature reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music. You'll have to tell her that. So do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first? I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. Whatever you want to talk about, she answered. Well, except for last night, I had an awesome time, I said. I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like they ruined the whole trip for me. No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take away from you the rest of it, okay? I know, I nodded. Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids? Yes, he called us this morning. Was Dad mad because they're so expensive? Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That's all that matters to us. And that you don't let those thugs ruin your trip. I kind of laughed at the way she said thugs. What? She asked. Thugs, I teased her. That's kind of an old-fashioned word. Okay, jerks, morons, imbeciles, she said, flipping over the sandwich in the pan. Cretinos, as my mother would have said. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I would. She shook her head. They were pretty big, Mom, I said. 7th graders, I think. She shook her head. 7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell us that. Oh, goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me, I said? And Amos was like, bam, he rammed right into the leader. They both crashed to the ground like in a real fight. It was pretty awesome. Amos's lip was bleeding and everything. He told us there was a fight, but, she said, looking at me with her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened, she trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. My Montauk hoodie got totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she answered. She lifted the grilled cheese onto a plate and put the plate in front of me on the counter. Milk or white grape juice? Chocolate milk, please. I started devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do it in that special way you make it with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of the woods in the first place, she said, pouring the milk into a tall glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered, my mouth full. As I was talking, she spooned in the chocolate powder and started rolling a small whisk between her palms really fast. But there was a huge line and he didn't want to wait, so he went towards the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking. I know she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass now had a 2-inch froth on top. That looks good, Mom, thanks. And then what happened? She said, put in the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of the chocolate milk. Is it okay if we don't talk about it anymore right now? Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you all about it later when Dad and Via come home. I'll tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell the whole story over and over, you know? Absolutely. I finished my sandwich in 2 more bites and gulped down the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? I asked. Like when I grow up, is it always going to be this way? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass and put them in the sink and rinsed them with water. There are always going to be jerks in the world, Augie, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people on this earth than bad people. And the good people watch out for each other and take care of each other, just like Jack was there for you and Amos and those other kids. Oh, yeah, Miles and Henry, I answered. They were awesome, too. It's weird because Miles and Henry haven't even really been very nice to me at all during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? No, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should take a nap. Thanks for leaving me Babu, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang and she answered. She started beaming as she listened. Oh my goodness, really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yep, he's right here. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Oh, okay. See you in 2 minutes. She clicked it off. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Veer are just down the block. He's not at work, I said. He left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said, so don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms, and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a full minute until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn. And she kissed me all over like she used to when I was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed the big white cardboard box they had brought in with them. What is that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling, and he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened the box. Inside was the cutest little puppy I've ever seen in my life. It was black and furry with a pointy little snout and bright black eyes and small ears that pointed down. This is called Bear. We called the puppy Bear because when Mom first saw him, she said he looked just like a little bear cub. I said that's what we should call him, and everyone agreed that that was the perfect name. I took the next day off from school, not because my elbow was hurting me, which it was, but so I could play with Bear all day long. Mom let Via stay home too, so the two of us took turns cuddling with Bear and playing tug of war with him. We had kept all of Daisy's old toys, and we brought them out now to see which ones he liked best. It was fun hanging out with Via all day, just the two of us. It was like old times, like before I started going to school. Back then, I couldn't wait for her to come home from school so she could play with me before starting her homework. Now that we're older, though, and I'm going to school and have friends of my own that I hang out with, we never do that anymore. So it was nice hanging out with her, laughing and playing. I think she liked it too. The shift. When I went back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were, a monumental shift, a seismic shift, maybe even a cosmic shift. Whatever you want to call it, it was a big shift. Everyone, not just in our grade, but every grade, had heard about what had happened to us with the 7th graders. So suddenly I wasn't known for what I had always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went was that Amos had gotten into a major fist fight with a kid, and Miles and Henry and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too. And the escape across the field became this whole long adventure through a cornfield maze and into the deep, dark woods. Jack's version of the story was probably the best because he's so funny. But in whatever version of the story, no matter who was telling it, 2 things always stayed the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me, and those guys, Amos, Henry, and Miles, protected me. And now that they protected me, I was different to them. It was like I was one of them. They all called me little dude, now even the jocks. These big dudes I barely even knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of it was that Amos became super popular, and Julian, because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry were hanging out with Amos all the time now, like they had switched to best friends. I'd like to be able to say that Julian started treating me better too, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me dirty looks across the room. He still never talked to me or Jack, but he was the only one who was like that now. And me and Jack, we couldn't care less. Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tushman called me into his office to tell me they had found out the names of the 7th graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of names that didn't mean anything to me, and then he said the last name, Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize the name, he said. They called him Eddie. Right, well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid headband. The right piece was completely gone and the left one was mangled. The band that connected to two, the lobot part, was bent down the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tushman. I looked at my hearing aid. No, I don't think so, I shrugged. I'm being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk about it with your parents tonight? I'll call your mom tomorrow to talk about it with her too. Would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail, but they probably go to juvie court, and maybe they'll learn a lesson that way. Trust me, that Eddie kid is not learning any lessons, I joked. He sat down behind his desk. Augie, why don't you sit down for a second, he said. I sat down. All the things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same mirrored cube, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like ages ago. Hard to believe this year's almost over, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Augie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been good, I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You're one of our top students. Congrats on the high honor roll. Thanks. Yeah, that's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrows. Certainly that night at the Nature Reserve was one of the low points. Yeah, I nodded, but it was also kind of good too. In what way? Well, you know how people stood up for me and stuff? That was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah. I know in school things got a little hairy with Julian at times. I have to admit he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff? I asked him. Middle school directors have a way of knowing about a lot of stuff. Do you have like secret security cameras in the hallways? I joked. And microphones everywhere, he laughed. No, seriously. He laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh, but teachers know more than kids think, Augie. I wish you and Jack had come to me about the mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you, middle school directors know all. It wasn't that big a deal, I answered, and we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if it's public yet, he said, although it will be soon anyway, but Julian Albans is not coming back to Beecher Prep next year. What? I said. I honestly couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think Beecher Prep is a good fit for him, Mr. Tushman continued, raising his shoulders. Wow, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. Then suddenly I noticed that the pumpkin portrait that used to be behind his desk was gone, and my drawing, my self-portrait as an animal that I drew for the New Year art show, was now framed and hanging behind his desk. Hey, that's mine, I pointed. Mr. Tushman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck, I nodded. I love this piece, Augie, he said. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked her if I could keep it on my wall. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh, yeah, nice. I've been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? What do you mean? I answered. That was the assignment. Yes, but why a duck? He said. Is it safe to assume that it was because of the story of the duckling that turns into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tushman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really, huh? Here I was looking for symbolism and metaphors, and sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said, not quite getting why he thought that was so funny. He laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Augie, thanks for chatting with me, he said finally. I just want you to know it's truly a pleasure having you here at Beecher Prep, and I'm really looking forward to next year. He reached across the desk and we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tushman. The last precept. This was written on Mr. Brown's chalkboard when we walked into English class for the last time. Mr. Brown's June precept. Just follow the day and reach for the sun. The polyphonic spree. Have a great summer vacation, Class 5B. It's been a great year and you've been a wonderful group of students. If you remember, please send me a postcard this summer with your personal precept. It can be something you made up for yourself or something you've read somewhere that means something to you. If so, don't forget the attribution, please. I really look forward to getting them. And then his address. The drop-off. The graduation ceremony was held in the Beecher Prep Upper School Auditorium. It was only about a 15-minute walk from our house to the other campus building, and Dad drove me because I was all dressed up and had on new shiny black shoes that weren't broken in yet, and I didn't want my feet to hurt. Students were supposed to arrive at the auditorium an hour before the ceremony started, but we got there even earlier, so we sat in the car and waited. Dad turned on the CD player and our favorite song came on. We both smiled and started bobbing our heads to the music. Dad sang along with the song. Andy would bicycle across town in the rain to bring you candy. Hey, is my tie on straight? I said. He looked and straightened it a tiny bit as he kept on singing. And John would buy the gown for you to wear to the prom. Does my hair look okay? I said. He smiled and nodded. Perfect, he said. You look great, Augie. Via put some gel in it this morning, I said, pulling down the sun visor and looking in the little mirror. It doesn't look too puffy. No, it's very, very cool. Augie, I don't think you've ever had it this short before, though, have you? No, I got it cut yesterday. I think it makes me look grown up, don't you? Definitely. He was smiling, looking at me and nodding. But I'm the luckiest guy on the Lower East Side because I got wheels and you want to go for a ride. Look at you, Augie, he said, smiling from ear to ear. Look at you graduating, looking so grown up and spiffy. I can't believe you're graduating from 5th grade. I know, it's pretty awesome, right? I nodded. It feels like just yesterday that you started. Remember, I still had that Star Wars braid hanging from the back of my head? Oh my gosh, that's right, he said, rubbing his palm over his forehead. You hated that braid, didn't you, Dad? Hate is too strong a word, but I definitely didn't love it. You hated it. Come on, admit it, I teased. No, I didn't hate it. He smiled, shaking his head. But I will admit to hating that astronaut helmet you used to wear. Do you remember? The one Miranda gave me? Of course I remember. I used to wear that thing all the time. Good God, I hated that thing, he laughed, almost more to himself. I was so bummed when it got lost, I said. Oh, it didn't get lost, he answered casually. I threw it out. Wait, what? I said. I honestly didn't think I had heard him right. The day is beautiful and so are you, he was singing. Dad, I said, turning the volume down. What? He said. You threw it out? He finally looked at my face and saw how mad I was. I couldn't believe he was being so matter of fact about the whole thing. I mean, to me, this was a major revelation, and he was acting like it was no big deal. Augie, I couldn't stand seeing that thing cover your face anymore, he said clumsily. Dad, I loved that helmet. It meant a lot to me. I was bummed beyond belief when it got lost. Don't you remember? Of course I remember, Augie, he said softly. Oh, Augie, don't be mad. I'm sorry. I just couldn't stand seeing you wear that hat thing on your head anymore, you know? I didn't think it was good for you. He was trying to look me in the eye, but I wouldn't look at him. Come on, Augie, please try to understand, he continued, putting his hand under my chin and tilting my face toward him. You were wearing that helmet all the time, and the real truth is I missed seeing your face, Augie. I know you don't always love it, but you have to understand I love it. I love this face of yours, Augie, completely and passionately, and it kind of broke my heart that you were always covering it up. He was squinting at me like he really wanted me to understand. Does Mom know? I said. He opened his eyes wide. No way. Are you kidding me? She would have killed me. She tore the place apart looking for that helmet, Dad, I said. I mean, she spent like a week looking for it in every closet, in the laundry room, everywhere. I know, he said, nodding. That's why she'd kill me. And then he looked at me, and something about his expression made me start laughing, which made him open his mouth wide like he had just realized something. Wait a minute, Augie, he said, pointing a finger at me. You'll have to promise me you will never tell Mommy anything about this. I smiled and rubbed my hands together like I was about to get very greedy. Let's see, I said, stroking my chin. I'll be wanting that new Xbox when it comes out next month, and I'll definitely be wanting my own car in about 6 years. A red Porsche would be nice, and he started laughing. I love it when I'm the one who makes Dad laugh, since he's usually the funny man that gets everybody else laughing. Oh boy, he said, shaking his head, you really have grown up. The part of the song we love to sing most started to play, and I turned up the volume. We both started singing. I'm the ugliest guy on the Lower East Side, but I've got wheels and you want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride. We always sang this last part at the top of our lungs, trying to hold that last note as long as the guy who sang the song, which always made us crack up. We were laughing. We noticed Jack had arrived and was walking over to our car. I started to get out. Hold on, said Dad. I just want to make sure you've forgiven me, okay? Yeah, I forgive you. He looked at me gratefully. Thank you. But don't ever throw anything else of mine out again without telling me. I promise. I opened the door and got out just as Jack reached the car. Hey, Jack, I said. Hey, Augie. Hey, Mr. Pullman, said Jack. How you doing, Jack, said Dad. See you later, Dad, I said, closing the door. Good luck, guys, Dad called out, rolling down the front window. See you on the other side of 5th grade. We waved and he turned on the ignition and I started to pull away, but then I ran over and he stopped the car. I put my head in the window so Jack wouldn't hear what I was saying. Can you guys not kiss me a lot after graduation? I said quietly. It's kind of embarrassing. I'll try my best. Tell Mom too. I don't think she'll be able to resist Augie, but I'll pass it along. Bye, dear old Dad, he smiled. Bye-bye, my son, my son. Take your seats, everyone. Jack and I walked right behind a couple of sixth graders into the building and then followed them to the auditorium. Mrs. G was at the entrance holding out the programs and telling kids where to go. Fifth graders down the aisle to the left, she said. Sixth graders go to the right. Everyone come in, come in. Good morning. Go to your staging areas. Fifth graders to the left, sixth grade to the right. The auditorium was huge inside. Big sparkly chandeliers, red velvet walls, rows and rows and rows of cushioned seats leading to the giant stage. We walked down the wide aisle and followed the signs to the fifth grade staging area, which was in the big room to the left of the stage. Inside were 4 rows of folding chairs facing the front of the room, which is where Mrs. Rubin was standing, waving us in as soon as we walked into the room. Okay, kids, take your seats, she was saying, pointing to the rows of chairs. Don't forget you're sitting alphabetically. Come on, everybody take your seats. Not too many kids had arrived yet, though, and the ones who were weren't listening to her. Me and Jack were sword fighting with our rolled up programs. Hey guys, it was Summer walking over to us. She was wearing a light pink dress and I think a little makeup. Wow, Summer, you look awesome, I told her because she really did. Really? Thanks, you do too, Augie. Yeah, you look okay, Summer, said Jack kind of matter-of-factly, and for the first time I realized that Jack had a crush on her. This is so exciting, isn't it, said Summer. Yeah, kind of, I answered, nodding. Oh man, look at this program, said Jack, scratching his forehead. We're going to be here all freaking day. I looked at my program. Headmaster's opening remarks, middle school director's address, light and day, middle school choir, fifth grade student commencement address, Ximena Chin, Pachelbel canon in D, middle school chamber music ensemble, sixth grade student commencement address, Mark Antoniak, under pressure, middle school choir, middle school dean's address, Ms. Jennifer Rubin, awards presentation, roll call of names. Why do you think that? I asked. Because Mr. Jansen's speeches go on forever, said Jack. He's even worse than Tushman. My mom said she actually dozed off when he spoke last year, Summers added. What's the awards presentation? I asked. That's where they give medals to the biggest brainiacs, Jack answered, which would mean Charlotte and Ximena will win everything in the fifth grade, just like Charlotte won everything in the fourth grade and in the third grade. Not in the second grade, I laughed. They didn't give those awards out in second grade, he answered. Maybe you'll win this year, I joked. Not unless they give awards for the most C's, he laughed. Everybody take your seats, Ms. Rubin started yelling louder now, like she was getting annoyed that nobody was listening. We have a lot to get through, so take your seats. Don't forget you're sitting in alphabetical order. A through G in the first row, H through N in the second row, O through Q is the third row, R through Z in the last row. Let's go, people. We should go sit down, said Summer, walking toward the front section. You guys are definitely coming over my house after this, right? I called out after her. Definitely, she said, taking her seat next to Ximena Chin. When did summer get so hot? Jack muttered in my ear. Shut up, dude, I said, laughing as we headed toward the third row. Seriously, when did that happen? He whispered, taking the seat next to mine. Mr. Will, Ms. Rubin shouted. Last time I checked, W came between R and Z, yes? Jack looked at her blankly. Dude, you're in the wrong row, I said. I am? And the face he made as he got up to leave, which was a mixture of looking completely confused and looking like he had just played a joke on somebody, totally cracked me up. Okay, I guess we actually will have to stop there. I didn't realize we have kind of a lot left, so I will do one more reading and then it will be over because this one might get a little too long. So I'll finish the book off for you next time. Okay, thank you.